So yeah, thank you. So as Paul already mentioned, I cannot give you any information from the technical point of view, but from the legal one. And so cybersecurity has also reached the step of government. I don't know how it's in Britain, but in Germany and in Austria, government suggested to store food at home in every household in case of a terror attack. And in Austrian newspapers, it was written that the highest risk for a terror attack is an attack on an electricity grid. So, which means that this topic is going to be more important every day. So, well, the name of my talk is NIS Directive and the Smart Grid. I would prefer the NIS Directive and what does it mean for a smart grid, because for me it's not sure everything by now. So, yeah, well, this is just a table of content. Yeah, the name of the directive is NIS Directive, means that it's a directive concerning measures for a high common level of security of network and information systems across the European Union, short the NIS Directive. It was set into force this August. And this means that all member states have from now on 21 months to transpose this directive into national law. Well, so one of the most important things concerning this NIS directive is that it's defined as a common provision for all network and information systems. It's not especially made for the energy sector. It's also there for the digital infrastructure, the financial market infrastructure, the banking sector. So it has to involve lots of sectors and not only the energy sector, which means that national government has to make sure that the energy sector is covered enough to protect this sector. Well, now the aim of the NIS Directive is to ensure a high common level of network and information security, to improve the security of the internet and private networks and information systems. But in my opinion, the thing that the NIS Directive mainly does is to improve cooperation between the member states. So I think the most important thing in the NIS Directive is, or the main point is, improving cooperation. Yeah, well, and it should also increase the preparedness of the member states. So now, cornerstones are that every member state has to adopt a national NIS strategy. There has to be created a cooperation group among the member states to facilitate strategic cooperation. And there also has to be a network of computer security incident response teams which should focus on operational cooperation. Well, these two groups are transnational networks. And there also have to be national institutions, like the competent authority which has to be established in every member state, the single point of contact, and the computer security incident response team at the national level. The directive has to be applied for operators of essential services and for digital service providers. Well, so as I said, operators of essential services and digital service providers. Well, the NIS Directive does not apply if a sector is regulated specifically, which means if European Parliament decides to release another directive or regulation or other provision that the NIS Directive does not apply, but the more specific one does apply. And also micro and small enterprises do not have to follow the rules of this directive, which can also lead to problems when these small enterprises are connected in the network, like an electricity network. So, well, what is an operator of essential services? This has to be a public or private entity with an important role for the society and economy. Member states have to identify these operators of essential services 6 months after the implementation of the directive into national law. And these operators of essential services have to take appropriate security measures, and they have to notify serious incidents to the national authority, competent authority. Well, operators of essential services can be found in all these sectors, which are the sectors covered by the NIS Directive. As you can see, it's also electricity operators, oil operators or gas operators may also fall under this point. Well, I don't know why it's another style here, but okay, doesn't matter. So operators of essential services have to require national measures which should prevent risks, ensure the security of network and information systems, and they have to handle incidents. These measures should be able to do this. Well, how can a member state identify an operator of essential services? Well, the directive defines an operator of essential services as an entity providing service which is essential for the maintenance of critical societal and economic activities. The provision of that service depends on network and information systems, and a security incident on this provision would have a significant disruptive effect on the provision of the service. Well, now we have to ask ourselves the question, which operators of essential services do exist in a smart grid environment? And I just have here this picture, and well, of course the distribution operator and the transmission system operator will be an operator of essential services, but it's not quite clear for all of these parties and players in a smart grid. So I think it will be interesting which ones will be identified as operator of essential services. Well, so as I said, the directive does also apply for digital service providers, which means any legal person that provides a digital service. And so it will also be interesting if there is any digital service provider in the smart grid environment. If you see here, the only thing that I can imagine that will be a digital service provider may be the data aggregator. But yeah, we will see this. So now the national efforts and institution which has to be established by every member state. At first, every member state has to establish do a NIS strategy. To adopt an NIS strategy, which means that there have to be defined strategic objectives, priorities, and a government framework. It also has to identify measures on preparedness, response, and recovery. Also has to include research and development plans, risk assessment plans, and cooperation methods. Well, this NIS strategy has to be communicated to the Commission 3 months after its adoption. Then there have to be 3 national institutions in every member state. So it's the competent authority, the single point of contact, and the computer security incident response team. So just shortly, the competent authority monitors the application of the NIS Directive at a national level, and this is the institution which is to be notified in case of an incident. So the competent authority or the computer security incident response team may be notified. So the single point of contact is there to have a liaison function to ensure cross-border cooperation. And it also has to write an anonymized summary report to the cooperation group, including the number of notifications which had made, the nature of incidents, the type of security breach, and the duration of the incident, and also the action which was taken according to this incident. Well, and also there has to be the Computer Security Incident Response Team, shortly the CERT, at national level, which has to handle these incidents and risks according to a defined process. It has to ensure the high availability of communication services and monitoring incidents. Also, for every institution is the problem that it has to cover all 7 sectors of the NIS Directive. It's not mainly the energy sector, which means, in my opinion, there should be a computer security incident response team for every sector, or just with specific knowledge for every sector. Yeah. So, and there also have to be 2 transnational networks. It's the cooperation group, which aim is to support and facilitate strategic cooperation among the member states, which means to share information about practices and talk about it. In this cooperation group, there will be members of the Commission, of ENISA, and of the member states. Also here the question, which people from the member state, from which sector, from all sectors, how many people, it's not defined. And there also has to be this Computer Security Incident Response Team network, which is there to build confidence and trust between the member states, and which should focus on operational cooperation. So to work over incident handling guidelines and such things. It consists of national CERTs, CERT EU, and the Commission with the role of an observer, and the ENISA as with supporting role. Yeah, well, also here, question what should be specific tasks and how can the energy sector be involved. So, well, this is one of the main points when you write about the NIS Directive, this incident notification according to the NIS Directive. Quite unspecific in the directive. So there are a few parameters which which are here. So the numbers of users which are affected, the dependency of other sectors for the incident, the geographic spread, the market share, the importance for maintaining a sufficient level. These are all parameters which have to be included when deciding if it's an incident with significant disruptive effect or not, and which, if it has to be notified or not. So these are the parameters in the NIS Directive which should be taken into account for the operator of essential services. So it's the number of users, the duration of the incident, and the geographic spread. Well, but these parameters may be further clarified with guidelines from national competent authorities. So, which means all these open questions should be considered by national law when implementing this NIS Directive into national law. So these are the parameters which should be taken into account by the digital service provider. Well, there is also the extent of disruption of the service and the impact on economic and social activities. These parameters may be further specified by the Commission. Public is to be notified if public awareness is necessary to prevent an incident, if it's necessary to deal with an ongoing incident, or if disclosure is otherwise in public interest. There is also this new General Data Protection Regulation, as Paul already mentioned. And in this General Data Protection Regulation, there are also rules for incident notification. Notification is to be done if there is risk to personal data, and if a personal data breach is likely to risk rights and freedom of individuals. So I have here summarized the difference between incident notification according to NIS Directive and incident notification according to the General Data Protection Regulation. So the directive focuses on network security and to improve the security of the internet. The data protection regulation focuses on the saving of personal data, which means that according to the directive, it's required to secure the networks and to protect the provision of the service. According to the data protection regulation, it's required to save and secure personal data, not the provision of the service. Incident notification is to be made according to the directive if the service is disrupted, and according to the general data protection regulation if personal data is in danger. According to the directive, it's the competent authority has to be notified, and according to the regulation, the data subject directly has to be notified. Well, now I'm coming to the end. This is the workshop which Paul already mentioned. We are going to have on the 19th of October in the European Parliament in Brussels. There will be attendees of the European Parliament, the Commission, ENISA, ESA, and also operators. We will talk about the security requirement for smart grids, but focusing on economic, legal, and social aspects. This is the leaflet of the workshop, which should have been taken place in April, which had to be cancelled because of the terror attacks in Brussels. It will slightly change, but so the professor from US already told us that he will talk there, and we hope that someone of the European Commission will also talk there, and we will have the live demonstration again. So if you one main point of this workshop is that there we will have a discussion of all these open points in the NIS Directive, and that I was talking about now, and which are open and which mainly concern the smart grid. Yeah, if you want to participate at this workshop, you can email me, or Paul can also send it to me. So, thank you for your attention. Any questions?